Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are using the Johnson edition, and we turn out to poem 439, Undue Significance, a Starving Man Attaches. Now, this is an interesting poem for a number of reasons. In some ways, we're back to poem 67, Success is counted sweetest by those who ne'er succeed. To comprehend a nectar requires sorest need. We don't often appreciate what we really want until we don't have it. And then it's in the absence, or as Emily will call it, the renunciation, that we actually come to some recognition of the value. Now, this is one of Emily's starving poems, as they sometimes are referred to. We'll come to poem 566, 570, 96, 12 later. Now, our assumption is that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through already our set of introductory comments where, for example, we commented on the fact that Emily is one of the great poets of psychology. And I think that, you know, it's fun to play that game. Who's the greatest poet that has understood better than anyone the complications of the human psyche? I think Emily is one of those people for the simple reason she spent so much time alone, guys. So she gave a lot of thought to introspection and the like. I'm also hopeful that you've worked through our preceding 438 poems. We just finished with 438, Forget the Lady with the Amulet. Now, one of the major themes of Emily's poetry, scholars have pointed this out many times, is the idea of possession through renunciation. It's a form of theodicy. That is to say, why must bad things happen? And Emily's argument often will be, we mustn't ask, why did this happen to me, but rather, why did this happen for me? What we'll hear is Emily's piercing virtue of renunciation. We'll obviously run that idea to ground. We're going to read a number of Emily poems and reference a whole bunch of them because of this poem, guys. Undue significance. A starving man attaches to food. Far off, he sighs, and therefore hopeless, and therefore good. Partaken, it relieves, indeed, but proves us that spices fly in the receipt. It was the distance was savory. Now, as we've said so many times, there may be a word in a poem for Emily that always seems to kind of to help us to be able to find the equilibration, that fulcrum point in the poem. Some of you will see significance. Some of you will see distance as being the word. Spices will matter in this poem, and of course, in other words, the idea that there's a certain element of spice, and Emily is going to use that word 8 different times in poems as she thinks about what makes great poetry great poetry. Notice she'll begin with interesting syntax. Undue significance a starving man attaches to food. Almost reminds us of Auden's Musée de Beaux Arts about suffering, they were not wrong, the old masters. The idea that here, notice the grammar makes us slow down. What is she really saying? A starving man attaches undue significance to food. Why? Because it's the thing that obviously he or she does not have. Far off, notice all the dashes here. He sighs, dash, and therefore, dash, hopeless, and dash, and therefore, dash, good, dash. In other words, the thing that we cannot have is usually what we assign the greatest importance to, right? Obviously, because we don't have it. And then once we have it, her word is partaken. It relieves, right? No doubt, indeed, she says, but proves us. Now, the word proves is interesting here because it can have double meaning, right? It proves us, it shows us, it demonstrates to us that spices fly. By the way, Emily's food and drink poems, let's just list them for your notes. We already saw it in 73, in 135, in 167, in 214, and in 383. All of those poems dealt with food or drink. We're going to see it again in 652, in 773, in 815, in 1282, and in 1725. Emily was a great baker of bread, and she loved, apparently, making bread for her father. To what degree Emily loved food, it's not clear. She was maybe an individual that enjoyed cuisine. Here, notice, it will be this use of the word spices. Once we have tasted the food, then all of a sudden we can begin to critique whether the food is spicy enough or not. Notice the spices fly in the receipt once we have it, right? Of course, this dash after receipt should probably be a period if we're really reading this grammatically the way we would like to. Notice her last observation. It was the distance was savory. That was savory. In other words, it was the thing we couldn't have that made the thing we longed for so important to us. Now, there are a number of poems that when we study them later, we will come back to this poem. Let's enjoy a few of them, and I'm just going to read them, guys, but it'll be fun for us to work through them. First of all, when we get to poem 579, she'll say it this way. I had been hungry all the years, my noon had come to dine. I trembling drew the table near and touched the curious wine. 'Twas this on tables I had seen when turning hungry home. I looked in windows for the wealth I could not hope for mine. I did not know the ample bread, 'twas so unlike the crumb the birds and I had often shared in nature's dining room. The plenty hurt me, 'twas so new, myself felt ill and odd as berry of a mountain bush transplanted to the road. Nor was I hungry, so I found that hunger was a way of persons outside windows. The entering takes away. Or when we come to poem 612, one more of her famous starving poems. It would have starved a gnat to live so small as I, and yet I was a living child with food's necessity. Upon me like a claw I could no more remove than I could coax a leech away or make a dragon move, nor like the gnat had I the privilege to fly and seek a dinner for myself, how mightier he than I, nor like himself the ant upon the window pane to gad my little being out and not begin again. Or how about when we come to 566? We'll enjoy coming back to this poem again. A dying tiger moaned for drink. I hunted all the sand, I caught the dripping of a rock, and bore it in my hand. His mighty balls in death were thick, eyeballs. But searching I could see a vision on the retina of water, and of me 'twas not my blame who sped too slow. 'Twas not his blame who died while I was reaching him, but 'twas the fact that he was dead. Of course, here the starving motif is far more tragic. When we get to poem 1430, we'll play around with this idea of renunciation. Who never wanted, mad as joy remains to him unknown. The banquet of abstemiousness defaces that of wine. Within its reach, though yet ungrasped, desires perfect goal, no nearer lest the actual should disenthrall the soul. Disenthrall is a fun word in that poem. Or when we get to poem 745, renunciation is a piercing virtue, the letting go, a presence for an expectation, not now, the putting out of eyes, just sunrise, lest day's great progenitor. Out thy renunciation is the choosing against itself to justify unto itself, when larger function make that appear smaller, that covered vision here. And finally, when we get to poem 690, we'll play this game. Victory comes late and is held low to freezing lips, too wrapped with frost to take it. How sweet it would have tasted, just a drop. Was God so economical? His table's spread too high for us unless we dine on tiptoe. Crumbs fit such little mouths, cherries suit robins, the eagle's golden breakfast strangles them. God keep his oath to sparrows who of little love know how to starve. Each one of these poems, of course, genius in their own right. What is the message here? A couple of scholars who have said it in different ways. Quote, "What we cannot hope to attain is what we often consider good." Or how about this one? Quote, "Once an object has been magnified by desire, it cannot be wholly possessed by appetite." At 2b, of course, these opening lines, and the syntax of the opening lines is brilliant. At 3a, well, we've mentioned all of the food and drink poems. How about Plutarch? It's possible, one scholar's pointed out, it's possible that Emily may be drawing from Plutarch's line, quote, "The best appetite is an empty stomach," end quote. Finally, at 3b, what is your view of renunciation, of going without? I hope Emily is challenging you. Thank you.